Hey there, welcome to Hiker Homily number 39. That's for the week of October 15th, 2018. How you doing? Hey, so for this week's kind of editorial topic slash rant, I don't know, you never know what I'm going to get up into, right? This week I wanted to talk a little bit about my perception. Now remember, that's all any of this is my perception, my opinions, and things like that. Half the time when I'm talking about this stuff, sometimes I'll talk about actual subjects where I've fully researched it, like the tick video I did, and other things like that, where there's some facts there and things like that. But a lot of the time, it's just this is my perception on stuff. And this week, my perception on because I think I'm one of those ones that have this ability to be able to look at the old hiker culture, for lack of a better word. A culture basically is any kind of group that has an identifying, base around it, and so there is a hiker culture out there. Hiker culture then and now, basically. So with that, a little bit of a quick background. Some of you already know, especially if you know me or if you watched some of my previous videos and things like that. I first learned to backpack when I was in my teens, back in the 80s, 1980s. So, over 30 years ago. And there have been a lot of changes to the hiker culture, and I can kind of tell that because, like I say, I was hiking, learned how to backpack in my teens, and then my early 20s. I did a whole bunch of just always, if I had a chance to get up into the mountains with friends, or my fiance, who is now my wife, and things like that, who was also for a long time an avid backpacker, then we do it. We just get up there and just really enjoy it. So I did a lot of backpacking in my late teens, early 20s. Lots of backpacking and things like that. And then life, I went to college. I did some backpacking in college, especially in the summers when I had, time off and things like that. But you have to concentrate on the education. And then once that was done, it was kind of a whirlwind into moving into a different area, from the Bay Area to the Valley, and a career and family, and just like whoosh, and doing all that. We did little bits here and there. I did take my kids on little backpack trips and stuff, but it was I was going out sometimes in the summertime. Every week I had at least a short trip planned, if not a couple of longer trips for the summer planned and things like that. Whereas, once I was in the career mode and things, I couldn't take all that time off and go. And I had a career that I didn't have every weekend off. I did not. I had every other weekend off. And so having a family and things, you can imagine, that fills up pretty quickly, right? Your weekends get filled with things and stuff like that. So I kind of, the gist of that is I kind of took a break from the hiker community for a long period of time. And now I'm retired and have time off again, and the ability to get back into that kind of stuff. I'm kind of going back into it. And we have thrown in this whole new, because when I was hiking, there was no, it existed. The internet existed. The World Wide Web existed. But it was not on anything close to the ability or the scale that it is today. With social media and things. We dreamed about the kinds of things our smartphones can do now. Back we didn't even have, real reliable cell phones back in the 80s. The portable phones we had were a joke. Where now we are able to carry a device in our hand that is everything from our movie camera to a small hand computer that can access the knowledge of mankind. It's just crazy what just a cell phone can do, let alone our computers can do, and things like that. So just having that with social networks and all the kind of stuff that comes with it, there's just absolutely no way most cultures can not be changed by the fact that our world has changed, right? And so I'm going to try and give that. I just want to talk a little bit about my perspective and kind of how, again, this is my perception. This is kind of my feelings on how things. Back in the day, so we'll get that out of there. Back when I was a youngster, you kids don't know what it was like. Back in the day, though, in the 80s, backpacking, there just seemed to be. I got to keep saying it because I know there's going to be people out there, even with my small channel, if they see this, that are just going to like, Rip, I don't see that. I am also this many years old, and I disagree. Okay, good. You disagree. You saw it differently. Awesome. So that's why I just keep saying this is my perception, mine. I just wanted to share it out there. And if there are others out there who kind of have a similar perception, great. If you have a completely different take on it, that's also good too. Because guess what? We're all different. We all have different experiences in life and things like that. So it's, and it's okay. So again, that's why I just keep repeating that. My perception. This is me talking about how I see it. I'm not trying to say this is how it is. This is how I see it for me. So anyway, let's get on with it. In the 80s, back in those days when I first started, it just seems like there was less emphasis on things. Let me put it that way. You know what I mean? You did your best to put together some stuff to get up there in the mountains. You got a backpack, and mostly back then we're talking about the old metal frame packs. I still have my first backpack, my old metal frame pack. It is still usable. It's in my garage. I haven't used it for anything, but I mean, in a pinch, if I absolutely had to, I could put that on my back, and I don't know how long it would last anymore, but, I could get out there and carry things. But, I had my backpack, and then you needed water bottles and things like that. And I had a pump filter to filter water because it was suggested back then and things like that. And if you weren't going to filter, they gave you all kinds of instructions on here's what you look for as far as water to drink. It should be moving. It should blah, 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 and things. But there just wasn't this emphasis on gear. You know what I mean? You got the best gear you could because the emphasis was on getting out there. Get out there into into the backcountry and stuff. That's what the emphasis was on. Was being out there on nature, on the backcountry. That's why you were doing it. You weren't doing it to crush miles. You weren't doing it to tick off a trail. In fact, for a long, long, long time, the whole area I used to backpack in, the Castle Peak area and things like that, we didn't even know that trail had a name. But it did. That was part of the Pacific Crest Trail. But a whole bunch of us who used to go up there all the time, we'd even see the blazes sometimes. It's like, oh, okay. But it didn't matter because we were up there in that specific area to have fun and just enjoy the outdoors. And that was our emphasis. And it wasn't on ticking off okay, I've done that part of a trail. I've done this thing. I've done that. It wasn't a checklist. It was, man, we just love being out here. And we went out there several times. And I can't tell you how many times we've hiked over Castle Pass into Round Valley and things like that. Just for a weekend, just to have a good time. It just seems that when I got back into hiking, and maybe it's because, again, now the hiking community, the hiking culture includes social media for a lot of people. For most people, social media is included. And on social media, you run out of things to talk about if it's just, I went to Round Valley this weekend. So there seems to be this huge emphasis on gear, on being ultralight or not being ultralight, and just all kinds of stuff like that. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. To be honest, I have to be honest, because some of the gear stuff fascinates me, and I have actually been extremely impressed when I got back into, and I've mentioned it several times on some of my other videos back when I was doing it wasn't Hiker Homily, it was just an update and stuff like that. When I was getting some of my equipment, new hiking shoes, and new this and new that. Um, the gear improvements are incredible, and I'm really happy that they're there. Because a lot of things are lighter and stuff like that. I am not an ultralight backpacker. I don't feel that's necessary to enjoy backpacking and stuff like that. I got no problem with people who want to get as light as they can. Awesome. Um, um, but that doesn't mean that I'm gonna I absolutely refuse to use that backpack. That is only weighs this. I'm going to use this old school frame pack that weighs 4 times. I don't have to do that. I have no problem using this lighter backpack if it is functional and works for me, and the one that I have does, and it's much lighter than my original pack and things like that. So it's good. A lot of this gear improvements and the interest in gear is cool and things. But at the same time, like I'm just saying, in the old days, it just wasn't there. You weren't so worried about that. Yeah, my pack's going to be heavy. That's part of back. That was really our attitude. The group that I was with, of probably 5 or 6 core people who I backpacked with a lot, off and on. It was just a thing. Is that we knew our packs were going to be heavy. It's just how it was. Didn't matter. Yeah, I'm going to carry a heavy pack because once I get to this place, it's going to be that much more of a triumph that I got in here. I'm having a good time this weekend, and I'm going to pack everything out. So is it cool that stuff is lighter now, and there's this interest in gear and dialing in gear like that? Sure, that's okay. But it really wasn't there, at least not with all the backpackers I hung out with back in the 80s. It just really didn't matter, Is it the things were sturdy and they held up? That's what mattered. We didn't care about the rest of it. Yeah, this is kind of heavy, but man, I could throw this thing off a cliff and it's going to survive. Yeah, my water bottles are a little heavier than the ones I can get at the store now, Life Water or Smart Water, any of those ones. But dang, I could beat the crap out of this water bottle, and it it's fine. So there's that. And then the other thing is too, and again, just gotta make sure everyone understands, this is my perception, is there didn't seem to be a need back then to divide the hiking community into subgroups. I never heard the term through hiker, or section hiker or anything. We were all just hikers. We were backpackers. That was usually the term we used. Because if there was any kind of a divide, it was a divide between folks who go backpacking and folks who take a walk for a day. Sometimes hiker meant, I put on a day pack, and that was fun to do too. A lot of us did both and things. But for most of us, if you were going out there and spending the night, you were a backpacker. And if you were just kind of going for a day to walk around, an established park trail and things like that, you were a hiker. Nowadays we have section hikers and through hikers and day hikers and things like that. We have all these little subdivisions that we have divided the community up into. And to tell you the truth, that's one where I don't know if is that necessary. Why do we need to do that? But some people take it really. Some people, it's no big deal. They're all. For example, myself. I have plans to do some through hiking in the future. I'm going to be doing some big trails, possibly even the Pacific Crest Trail. I already made an announcement last week that I'm going to do at least the desert part of the Pacific Crest Trail. Now that will technically make me a section hiker because I didn't do the entire Pacific Crest Trail, which is funny because doing the desert is, 700 to 800 miles, depending on where you call it at the end. But if I were to hike the Tahoe Rim Trail, which is only 170 miles, I'd be a through hiker because I through hiked that trail. But if I do 700 miles in the PCT, I'm a section hiker still. You see how these lines almost seem arbitrary. That we have divided the hiker community up silly, because what I am is a backpacker. I'm a hiker, I'm a backpacker. Whether I do 700 miles on Pacific Crest Trail or 2,650, I'm a backpacker. Whether I through hike the Tahoe Rim Trail or section hike the Pacific Crest Trail, I'm a backpacker. I'm doing it. And that's really where we should be, but we kind of have this need for whatever reason, or this need has established itself somewhere. Where and I see this in other groups too. I see this in science fiction and fantasy and horror movie fandoms. I see this in the neo-pagan communities. I see this in all kinds of other little cultures that I take a look at and stuff like that. That people get into these cultures, hiker culture, fandom culture, whatever, and then decide they want to be even more special than that. Just being part of this group isn't quite enough. I want to make myself a little different tier within this group. And so being a backpacker just isn't enough for some people. I'm going to be a through hiker. You didn't hike the whole Pacific Crest Trail. You hiked this much of it. So you and I are not, yeah, maybe we're both backpackers, but I'm a through hiker because I did this. And I'm not saying everyone has that attitude. There's a lot of folks out there who do not. But there are people who absolutely do. They think it's something to brag about that they've done this and other people haven't. And therefore, they want a special title. And it just seems kind of silly to me that people need that. And again, I am not saying everyone. I am not saying that PCT hikers get done at the terminus up there in Canada, or if you were so southbound, the terminus in Mexico, and just all of a sudden start, crapping on other hikers and things like that. Most of the hikers don't do that, but there are some, and that's really what I'm talking about there. It just seems kind of silly that there are people out there who do that, but there it is. That's how it goes. But really, those are the two big differences that I see. Is there just seems to be more of an emphasis on things sometimes than the actual outdoors. Just the emphasis should be getting to the outdoors, not necessarily getting to the outdoors with these perfect equipment things. It's good if you want to do that. If you're able to do it, great. But if you're not able to do that and the gear you're carrying is a little more heavy, but you're still having a good time in the outdoors, that should be the key that we're focusing on. And a lot of people, are a decent amount of people in the hiking community, seem to not be able to focus on that. They focus more on things than on the actual experience. And it's kind of sad to me that there are people who do that. And then like I say, not trying to judge it, not saying it's completely good or bad. I'm just saying the other thing seems to be a big difference. The major difference between then and now is back then we didn't have these little sub-niche groups within the community. We were backpackers. Oh, where'd you backpack this summer? Oh, I backpacked here, I backpacked there. Oh, I did the Pacific Crest Trail this summer. Oh, I did this, I did that. We were all backpackers, and we talked about it, and we had a good time talking about backpacking. We didn't have to have special groups, through hikers, trail section hikers, day hikers, this and that. We were just all hikers, and that we seem to have moved away from that. We seem to need these little individual boxes within our big umbrella group. Hiking has become this umbrella term for a whole bunch of different types of hiking experiences, and yet we're all still hikers, so we should all be okay with that. But there are some folks, again, I got to say that again, some folks who kind of get elitist about it, and it's unfortunate. And I really didn't see that much back in the day. But then again, I will use that caveat. I will say that perhaps one of the reasons why I didn't see it that much is because we didn't have this major connection. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have Facebook and Instagram and all of this information at our fingertips. Back in the day, I wouldn't have heard about some of these through hikers, triple crowners like Dixie from Homemade Wanderlust or Darwin on the Trail and some of those, except unless they got maybe interviewed by some outdoor magazine or something like that. Other than that, I wouldn't know who they were. I would have no idea what they were hiking because they were not in my immediate hiking group and things like that, or I wouldn't have probably met them on the trail because they're hiking in different places and things. Well, now with all this information, we get to see that, and so I think that's part of the issue right there is the the change is there. Maybe I didn't see the divisiveness because I was in my own little group and we didn't get a whole lot of information from other, unless I went backpacking in Colorado, I had no idea what the Colorado hikers were talking about or dealing with. Unless I actually hiked the entire Pacific Crest Trail, I only met the occasional PCT hiker on the trail. Where nowadays you don't even have to hike at all. You can just be kind of a fan of hiking and never go hiking yourself, but know all about all these trails and all these hikers because we have all this information and things. And so there's a big difference there. So that's really kind of what I was just kind of ranting about this week. And I'm sorry if that bored the heck out of you, but it just kind of was interesting to me, the differences or the perceived differences between hiking then and the hiking world now. There it is. If you agree with me, disagree with me, have a different take on it, let me know. Again, it's a tiny channel, so I usually don't expect answers on these, but every once in a while people fool me and they actually give me some answers on things. So, as usual, you can get a hold of me at hikingforhealthca@gmail.com or hikingforhealthca on Instagram or Facebook. I have a page there. And other than that, thanks so much for listening to my goofy rant from the past and on the present. And we will see you next week.